you so much. Well,
All
welcome
right.
everyone.
Welcome. Sorry, just starting us off. Welcome to Microsoft Tools for Inclusive Digital Learning. We are happy you're here with us today. This is being recorded, so if you happen to be camera shy, turn off your camera. If you're camera ready, we want to see your smile. We're here for that. I'll just start. We are Cobblestone Collective, and we're here together, two educators that are sharing our passion about technology and teams and inclusion through using Microsoft Teams. My name is Tammy. I'm joining from you from unceded territory, colonized as Montreal, Quebec. I'm going to be hiding in the chat and answering questions that may come up here, or if there's something that you'd like Alex to get back to and focus in on, I'm here for that too. And I present to you Alexandra, who's going to be taking over most of this. I'll be off in the chat.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Welcome everyone. I wrote Alexandra, but I actually go by Alex. So if you have any questions, please just write them in the chat. Tammy is more than welcome to interrupt me if there's something that you would like to see again, something that you'd like more explanation about. Absolutely, please don't hesitate. I'm more than happy to take any questions as we go along. I am also joining from unceded territory in Montreal. I'm sure Tammy's going to do it if she hasn't already done it, but I know her, she's already on the ball. I'm sure she's dropped in the link to the slide deck if you would like to follow along. That link is there. It's just the cc.page/IDL ATLE. You will be able to follow along with my slideshow if you'd like to, but if not, don't worry about it because, as Tammy said, it will be recorded, so you can always go back and watch the slide deck afterwards. I try to do as hands-on demos as possible because I really feel like when you can see the tool, you can understand it better. So I'll cover it first in PowerPoint and then I'll actually go and demo it live for you. But before I get started, I do just want to take a couple of seconds to acknowledge the land where I am today. Oops, I didn't mean to click on that. There we go. So I just wanted to say that it's probably likely that you're participating and learning from or near the traditional territorial land of one of the many Indigenous groups that are found across Canada. I am currently located on unceded territory, and I acknowledge that I'm presenting from the home of the Haudenosaunee Nation. This beautiful land provides me with a space to teach, learn, explore, and share my passion of technology with you. If you are ever wondering where you are participating or learning from, you always have that option to go to native-land.ca, and we'll actually show you where you are located and what lands you are actually on. It's just a fun activity that you can do with students. So on behalf of Cobblestone Collective, thank you so much for joining us. We're more than happy to be here with you today. Thank you to Microsoft for also making this a session that's available to you. And let's just jump straight in. So I have three major categories of our presentation today. The first one being accessibility in Edge. Now, I was just saying to Sammy before we actually started the call that many people don't know Edge or they don't use Edge as their browser. So many of us are used to using Google Chrome. I know that that's what I choose to use on many of my devices, whether it was working on a Mac or a PC or on my phone. For some reason, I've always just had Chrome kind of drilled into my head. And then when I was starting to think about accessibility, I wanted to know if there was a browser that would actually have functions of inclusion built into the platform. Because I had some students that were struggling with reading. I had some students that were visually impaired and they needed to be able to have text read aloud to them. And I was hunting and searching, and I actually stumbled across all of these great accessibility features that are actually available in the Edge browser. But Edge wasn't available everywhere yet. It is now. So you can have Edge on any device. Anybody can use the Edge browser. So we're going to discover three things inside Edge that I just think are amazing tools and features. The first one is going to be the Immersive Reader. If you have ever seen Microsoft's Immersive Reader, you know how powerful it is. Then we're going to talk about just read aloud. So if you didn't need all of the features of Immersive Reader and you just wanted the read aloud option, they will have that there for you as well. And then we're going to touch really quickly on Math Solver. I think this is really cool. I think it's a really fun, different, accessible feature. If you're a math educator, this might make you panic because all of a sudden you'll realize that your students may not be doing their own math homework, but hopefully we can show you a way that you can use it as a revision tool. Then we're going to talk about creating accessible presentations. Not something that we often think about, but it's something that's extremely important. So how do we actually make sure that the presentations that we're giving on a day-to-day basis, whether they're in class or online, how do we make sure that those are as accessible as possible? And then last but not least, I'm going to touch very briefly on dictation. So how can we actually talk to our device and have it write what we say in case we have any of those physical limitations? So Microsoft is a huge advocate for accessibility tools. I put this chart together just so that you can see how many different accessibility features are built into the platform as standard. So on the left-hand side, you have all of the different accessibility features. And then as you move across, you have the different applications that they can be found in. And there are more that are added to this list all the time. So along the left, we have things like page color, syllable, line focusing, translation, closed captioning, math. And then as we move across, you can see that most of the tools are found in most of the areas. So you can see, for example, that line focusing helps students focus on the line that they're reading. It's available from OneNote to Outlook to Teams to Whiteboard to Minecraft to Word. It's really available everywhere. So I put that there. You can hang on to that if you're ever thinking to yourself, oh, I wonder if I can do a translation in a whiteboard. You look for translation and you just move across and realize, actually, I absolutely can translate directly in whiteboard. Great. So just put that there for you. And along with those accessibility features, we always want to be as well promoting some independent learning. So Microsoft really tries to target a lot of different areas of that independent learning. These are just some of them that I highlighted today. And we're going to touch on a few of these different independent learning strategies that we may be able to work with our students. So if you would like to follow along, you're more than welcome to, but you do not have to. As we said, this is recording. I have a lot of stuff packed into 45 minutes. So you might want to go back and watch the recording. But if you did want to know where to start with all of these tools, you could head to portal.office.com, and that would get you signed into your Office 365 account. And specifically for today, we would want you to do that in the Edge browser, because that is where we're going to be starting off our first session. So accessibility in Edge. What is Edge? It is just the Microsoft browser. It is, we will call it Internet Explorer 2.0. It is the newer and up-to-date version of Internet Explorer. So that is the one that we're going to be using today. And then we're going to start by talking about the Immersive Reader. So if you've never heard of Immersive Reader before, it is a tool that helps students understand and read along with content. It allows them to modify text. It allows them to make the adjustments to their reading environment in the way that they would like to. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. But people are like, wow, I only knew that Immersive Reader was in like Word or PowerPoint or Teams. I didn't know I could use it in the browser. You absolutely can. If you are working inside the Microsoft Edge browser, on some websites, not all, but on most websites, right beside the URL, you'll actually have this little book symbol, and that indicates that this website can be worked on and used with the Immersive Reader. So when you will see that in that Immersive Reader, if you click that option, you will have 4 different areas that your students could work with in that Immersive Reader space. One being a read aloud, one being a text preference, one being a grammar tool, and one being a reading preference. So I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like now. I'm actually just going to share my entire screen with you. That way I can move about a bunch of different screens and we won't have to worry. There we go. And I am going to go to my browser, which is Edge. So as you can see, the Edge browser looks like this at the bottom. It should be this little, I'm actually going to get rid of this. It looks like this little circle, kind of like a little wave. And in that little wave, there's a little person because I'm actually signed into my account. But if I come to the Edge browser and I happen to pick this website, I was in a theme about whales. I'm not really sure why. That was on my kick when I was building this presentation. I noticed that on this website, I find that little book with a microphone. So if I actually click on that, it will bring this into this Immersive Reader. So you can see that this website doesn't look anything like what was there 3 seconds ago. I'll show you again what the main website looked like. What could be some of the possible distractions for students? Well, we've got menus that pop up. If I come down here, we've got text that maybe is hard to read. There's got some light colors here. Maybe I don't want my students to have like the share to Facebook or tweet. I just want them working on the actual content. So if I come and click that Immersive Reader in the top right-hand corner, it will bring me to this screen where everything actually gets pulled away all of the extra information, and all that shows up is the text and the images. So we don't get any of those menus anymore. We don't get any of those like Twitter or Facebook posts. We just get the text. And now from here, we have a few different options. We can click the read aloud. If you want to hear out loud what it would read, it can absolutely do that. I'm just going to make sure I shared my video or my audio with you when I decided to share my screen, so you can actually hear what it looks like. There we go. So if I wanted to listen to this, I could just click on the menu and start there. And when I hit read aloud, I can just hit play, and it's going to start reading it out loud. And you're like, oh, where is it reading? It will start at the top.
Whale.
There we go.
Why they matter.
And we'll keep going.
Copyright Antonio Biziello /WWFUS. Whales are at the top of the food,
etc. You can always choose some different voice options, whether the speed is good for you, slow or fast, as well as choosing the different voices. There's a ton of them. So if you are in a French immersion class, if you teach Spanish, if you are teaching German, you have a bunch of different languages that you can use with their students because it will actually read it aloud for them. Then you also have, if you don't want to do the read aloud, you have some text preferences. And this is what I think is so fantastic. We're so used to seeing the Immersive Reader in a already existing document, but this is doing it right on a website. So sometimes you get websites where the text is just so small and you have to like zoom in with your zoom. This just plays with the text size. So it can be really tiny to really large, depending on each individual student's needs. You also have text spacing. So if I want to increase the size space between words, letters, and lines, I can actually bump up that text spacing. And then for those students with dyslexia or dysgraphia, this can be a huge help. It just makes the words so much easier to spot. You've got 3 different fonts to choose from. Again, some students might find it easier to read with one font versus another. You have the option to make your text columns really narrow, a normal width, and then a wide column, again, depending on each individual student's needs. And then the page themes. I tell this story all the time. I worked with a student that was visually impaired, and he could only read white on black. He couldn't read black on white. When it was black on white, all the words looked like they were moving. So I used to have to print everything on black. So my school secretary was not very happy because I used to go through so much toner. Now that student can just simply come into the Immersive Reader, choose that text preference, and put the color behind the text that is better and easier, more accessible for them to read. So that's the text preferences. Then you've got some, yes, go for
question,
it.
Alex, sorry, from Annie.
Yeah.
So I think Clint actually answered it, but just in case, if in the Edge browser, the icon is not there, is there a way to initiate or start Immersive Reader? So that was a question that Annie originally answered, if the icon isn't on a website.
Yeah, no, there isn't. As I said, most websites will have it. I know, for example, like the CBC, any of the CBC news websites, for some reason it won't work. It's just because the actual layout, I'm guessing it's the way that the website is actually built on the back end. The Immersive Reader can't go in and extract the text. So unfortunately, if you don't see it, it just means that that website doesn't have the Immersive Reader option.
Alex,
yes.
I'm just wondering, I'm on the same website you are, and I don't have it. And I'm wondering if that's a setting that my division maybe had put in, do you think?
So Mirna, you might also just want to check to see if your Edge browser is up to date. Sometimes we don't think about updating the browser. We just assume that when we do an update on our computer, the actual browser does an update. So you can actually just go into the 3 dots and check for any updates that are available on the browser in this section here called settings. And sometimes that can help push it as well, but it should be totally available to you as well. If for some reason that doesn't work, try to sign into the browser with your education account. Sometimes there are some education features that are hidden in Edge when they're linked to an educator account. So just double check that. Those are a few options just to see if you can get it to work.
Yeah, Alex.
Yeah.
Actually was at the CBC website and highlighted an article.
Yes.
And then a little thing came up with 3 buttons in it, and I clicked more actions, and then it said open selection in Immersive Reader, and I did, and then all the features you're showing showed up, even though
absolutely So it'll only do it if you highlight some text. It won't take the whole site for you.
Okay, gotcha.
That's the difference. So you have to like highlight a section of the text, then choose those 3 dots and say, bring this, just this little paragraph. But like it didn't pull in the images that may have been in the article, and you don't get the whole page. But you can definitely do it for chunks.
Excuse me.
Yes.
There's also another way. If you do go to the, if the icon is not in the browser, you go to the 3 dots and then you go down, you will see read aloud, and that
Yeah.
that will
But the
also,
read aloud only reads it. You don't have the text preferences or the grammar tools or the reading preferences. And we'll get to read aloud in a second. So just hang tight.
then it comes up it comes up and it says voice options.
Yes,
So
exactly.
you have some voice options there.
Yes. We'll get to that read aloud in a second. That's the next one that we're going to. Okay, I'm going to continue on. So we've got the text preferences. Then we've got some grammar tools. So if I click on grammar tools, you'll see that I can actually do syllable parsing. So if I want to see the word, I'll just zoom this in a bit so you can kind of see it. If you wanted to see, I'll make our text a bit bigger. There we go. So if I wanted to see overall as 3 syllables in that grammar tool, I've got the syllables and I can see that significant. There we go. You can also highlight things like nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs, and you can even label them. So if you're looking for any second language learners that are trying to make them understand what a noun is as a person, place, or thing, then you will be able to see that now that N is a noun or that V is a verb. If you're like, oh, you know, in my classroom, I actually highlight all the verbs in blue, you can change those colors to reflect whatever it is that you use in your classrooms. So that is available to you in the grammar tools under the Immersive Reader. Then you will also see that last but not least, you have reading preferences. And reading preferences allows you to do 3 things. One is the line focus. So 1 line of text at a time, or you can do 5 lines or 3 lines, depending on the length of your text. That would be 3 lines. That would be 1, 3, and 5 to help kind of highlight and bring the focus to where they're reading, where the student is reading. Then you've also got a picture dictionary. So if you didn't know, for example, what the word environment meant, if you bring your cursor over top of the picture dictionary and you click on environment, it'll actually show you what that environment is, what maybe that word means. What is size? It shows you a few different options. What is a dolphin? It'll show you a picture. So for those early language learners or second language learners, having those pictures associated directly to the text can be a huge accessibility tool that is extremely helpful for them. And last but not least, we have translation. So if I was working in a French language class, English language, Spanish, German, whatever it is that you're teaching, you could say, okay, I'd like to take this website and translate the entire page into French, and it will do it for you immediately. It does not use word by word translation. It does contextual translation. So you wouldn't have sentences that don't make sense. It actually reads the sentences and translates in context. So that is the Immersive Reader. That is, if you push that little book symbol, it will take you the entire website and bring it into that simple and easy to read option. So that was the first part of our Immersive Reader. The second part of our Edge option is read aloud, which someone kindly pointed out. But it's if you didn't want to actually go completely into the Immersive Reader and you just wanted to hear a certain section of a website. This read aloud tool allows learners to listen to text and read along on any web page. So this isn't on most, this is really on any. I said this tool is particularly useful for learners who struggle with visual fatigue, for non-native speakers, for readers that have dyslexia, or for learners who simply prefer to listen versus read. So how do we actually have our text read aloud to us? What can we do? All we need to do is find any website. Again, I'll take a different whale website in this case. I'm going to go and get let's take a different tab. I'm just going to get my menu out of the way. There we go. And now if I want to listen to this section, all I have to do is highlight it. And then on Edge, by default, these 3 little dots show up. And on those 3 little dots, I can go to more actions. And I can see there that I have read aloud selection. And I can click that. and it will read it aloud to me. So you can see that it's just processing
Whale,
here.
any of the larger species of aquatic mammals belonging to the order Cetacea.
There you go. I can do it on a different website as well. Let's say I take this guy and I just want to read this. Again, so it's 3 dots. You can go to more actions and you can find the read aloud selection. Again, it processes it so that it makes sure that it knows what it's talking about, and then it will start to read.
Saltwater environments also provide whales with the abundant food sources they need in order.
And there you have those voice options again. So different voice options, the speed, and whether it's the name of the person that's reading and the speed with which they are reading. So that is the read aloud option. Not the same as Immersive Reader because you don't have any of the grammar pieces. But if you would like to hear just a certain section of a page or a certain section of an article, you can simply highlight it and have that read aloud. Now, if for any reason, when you highlight, you don't see this little 3 dots that pop up, it's the same 3 dots that you find in the top right-hand corner of Edge. So if you click on those 3 dots, you would see here that you have read aloud as well. There's also a handy little shortcut, which is just Control-Shift-U, and that will start the read aloud as well. So that's the read aloud feature. That's the second feature that we talked about in our Microsoft Edge accessibility. And then last but not least is the actual math solver. And as I said, this is one of my favorites. You can actually have math equations not just solved for you, but actually shown to students the process of solving the math equation. So the first step is, again, you're always making sure you're using the Edge browser. And on that browser, what you're going to do is you're going to navigate to a website or a PDF that has your math equations in it. And then you can find that math solver in the top right-hand corner where we went to go find the read aloud as well as the Immersive Reader. So I'm going to show you that. I actually have a PDF already pulled up here. It happens to just be a bunch of solve for X equations. And what I'm going to do is I am going to come into those 3 little dots on the right-hand side, and you can see that under More Tools, I have Math Solver. If I click that, it's going to bring up this little menu on the right-hand side, and I have 2 options. I can actually choose an equation that I would like to highlight, or I could even type in a math problem, but I'm just going to choose the first one. I'm not going to include the number 1 because I don't want it to be a part of my equation. I'm just going to simply take the math equation and I'm going to highlight it. And then by default, I'll have that little solve button pop up. So I'm going to hit solve. And then on the right-hand side, it'll actually pop up with the math equation and to give me the solution. Now, some people are going to go, oh my goodness, students will never do their math homework again. They're never going to know how this was solved. That's true. They will know how it's solved because they can have the solution steps. So it will actually show them the steps for solving this particular linear equation. So it says, okay, you started with this equation. Your first step is going to be to subtract 7 from both sides. Once you've done that, you'll now subtract the 7 from 9 and you'll get 2. You'll see that it even gives you the option to graph both sides in 2D. And it actually suggests some videos around how to solve linear equations in math. Both of these happen to be Khan Academy videos, but it gives the students some suggestions. If they're looking for help, if they're looking for assistance, obviously maybe not for their homework, but for some review or like a virtual tutor, this math equation is such a great accessibility feature for the students that really do struggle with math. I'll give you one more example just to choose a different type of math equation. Let's choose, for example, this one, which is 48 equals 6x. I will choose solve. There it comes up. And then it gives me, again, the solution steps. So it shows me visually exactly how we got to the solution that x equals -8. And again, if I scroll down, I get the graph and I have some more recommended videos. So that is the Edge browser. I mean, there are a zillion and one other things that you could talk about in the Edge browser, from web capturing, which allows you to draw over top of your web pages to collections, which helps you organize all of your content into groups instead of just having a bunch of bookmarks. But those were the three that I really chose to focus on with everyone today. So we had the math solver, we had the read aloud, and we had the immersive reader. So before I jump to the next thing, Tammy, have there been any questions?
You sparked all kinds of interest because folks are like, I need this Edge browser now. What's happening right now is people are just trying to troubleshoot how to install it on their device. So depending on their hardware, and does it work on a Chromebook? It seems like the answer is yes and no. So I think it probably will depend on which piece of hardware folks are using, and then also their IT administrator allowing or not the download and installation. So
perfect. Well, what I can do is as well, if I know that that download piece is kind of a hot topic, I can add a link to where you can actually find out how to install Microsoft Edge on the various devices. I'll just add that to the presentation afterwards, so that when you go back using that short link, you'll have the instructions there as well.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Alex.
No problem. Okay, so phase two, as I said, we've got a lot to cover in 45 minutes. So I'm going to keep things rolling, is creating accessible presentations. And the first one is using PowerPoint online. So PowerPoint has a few different techniques that we're going to talk about today for accessibility, one being themes, one being subtitling, and one being rehearse with a coach. You have all of those same features in the desktop version as well. You just get a couple of extra pieces, which is a slide recording and a screen recording. So I'm going to show you all of this right away. I'm going to go and get into my Outlook and my Office account. I go to office.com. I'm going to be signed in to my Office account. Ignore the fact that it's in French. It shouldn't really make any difference. I'm going to put mine in English, but in case you know or you didn't know, you can actually run your Office 365 in multiple languages. That is also an accessibility feature. My environment is always bilingual because I'm jumping between English and French. So my school district just allowed me to actually have both. So if I don't want to present in French today, I can just quickly switch it over to English. And that way you can have the browser in the correct language that you would like. All it does is it updates it, and then it just bumps you back out and bumps you back in again, and you should be good to go. So you should be back into your Office 365 with your correct language. So that is exactly what I'm doing. And again, you can use any of your Office tools in any of the languages that you would like. You can even have your regular PowerPoint presentations on your desktop to actually be logged in as well into a completely different language if you needed it. So there we are. I am signed into my Office account, and I am going to go locate that PowerPoint option. And I am going to click on here. By default, I think a lot of us click on new blank presentation, but you have to know that there are a ton of themes that you can choose from. All of these themes that appear here have already been verified as accessible for education. Now, what does that mean? It means they have titles, they have subtitles, they have high contrast between the text and the background. So you're already going to get a visually accessible presentation. I'm just going to click a blank presentation because I'm just going to do something really easy that doesn't need to be super long or complex. So I'm inside my PowerPoint slide deck, and all I'm going to do is I am going to click here to add a title, and I am going to add, I'm on a Wales theme. So if I type Wales, I'm going to just start giving a presentation about that. If I want Microsoft assistance, let's say I'm a student that gets really distracted by the creation of content. I have a hard time focusing on exactly what it is that we're talking about. I have a tendency to get really caught up in the design. Microsoft actually has a designer that will help you organize your presentation. And what I think is just incredible is that there's some OCR, or ocular character recognition, that's linked directly in PowerPoint. So because I typed Wales, it is literally suggesting me Wales-themed slide decks. I don't even have to add the image. So for those students that get easily distracted when hopping in and out, asking them to go collect an image, download it, save it, this just cuts all of that out, and the students can really right away get focused into the content of the presentation, which I think is just amazing. So that's the themes. That's that first piece, the PowerPoint themes. You can actually do the same thing if you're working on PowerPoint locally. So this is the PowerPoint that I was presenting. If I do the same thing and I go to do a new slide, you will notice that, again, by default, there's a bunch of blank presentations, but you actually even have a section that's just built for education. And just in that, it's all high accessible, easy to read, high contrast PowerPoint slide decks that you can use to create your presentation, or that your student can use to create their presentation. So if I take, for example, this first suggested education layout, you can see that it's already given me a few ideas of some slides, but every slide has a title, a subtitle, and bullet points. That's saying that, okay, if someone who's using a screen reader wants to read this, it's going to be able to logically follow. So it's already considered an accessible presentation simply because it's part of that template or that theme in PowerPoint. So that's the first piece. The next piece, if I come in, I'm just going to refresh to see if this decides to switch to English or not. If not, I can do it on the desktop. It'll give me the same options. The second option I had for everyone here is something called, under slideshow, whether this is on the web or not, you have the option to, hold on, get out of here. There we go. I need to be able to see. You have the option to rehearse with a coach. So if you have a student that is nervous, that has a hard time presenting, that finds it challenging to actually deliver a presentation, you can choose to rehearse with the coach, and it will actually guide the student through what a good presentation looks like. So if I hit rehearse with coach, you will see that it starts to listen to me and it's going to look at me as well. So if I say start rehearsing, as I start speaking, you'll see that I've got this little feedback window in the bottom right-hand corner. It's listening to what I'm saying. If I start speaking incredibly, incredibly slowly, the presentation will give me feedback that I am talking too slow. If I start speaking super fast, as soon as I'm done my presentation, it's also going to give me the feedback that I went way too fast. So that rehearse with a coach is really amazing. As soon as I exit, I actually get like a rehearsal report, and it will tell you, did you use inclusive language? How was your pace? Did you have a large variety of language? Did you have inclusiveness? So if I said fireman or snowman or whatever else I might say, okay, don't call them a fireman, call them like a person that works as a first responder. It will give you suggestions. It also talks about originality. So if you just read your slides out loud, it will tell you, you just read everything that was on your slide. If you use a lot of filler words, it will say things like, Alex, you said 15 times, or you said or you said so. So for those students that are really nervous and have a lot of anxiety around presenting, the rehearse with a coach can be such a great tool for them as an accessible way for them to get practice delivering their presentation so that they feel comfortable and encouraged and confident when they actually have to present it to the class. So that can be found on the PowerPoint on your device, and it can also be found on the PowerPoint on the web. And then last but not least in PowerPoint, before I jump to the dictation feature, and I'll leave a few minutes at the end for some questions, is the option to use subtitling. So under the actual section called presentation, which would be in English normally, it will say in here the option for subtitling. So under presentation, you have the option to use subtitles. Now you can choose the language that you're going to speak. So say I'm going to speak in English, and I would like my subtitles to be in English as well. So I'm going to go to English. And then when I actually start my presentation, you will see that along the bottom, I now have subtitles. So as I'm speaking, you will see, if I actually get it to go, come on. Are you going to let me? It might also be because I'm using a different microphone. Oh, because I have to allow the mic. There we go. And now I should actually get subtitles across the bottom of my presentation. So hang tight. I'm going to, there we go. They are starting to work. So as soon as I start speaking, I will have the subtitles that come across the bottom. This is only because I decided to choose them to appear along the bottom. I could choose the subtitles to be on the top as well. And you can see that I don't actually have to pre-prepare any content. I can just deliver my presentation as is, and it will pick up all of the subtitling that I have. Now, what kind of blew my mind with PowerPoint and its accessibility with slideshows and the subtitling is that I could, for example, speak to you all in French and have it subtitle in English. So if I am a second language learner and I need you to understand my presentation, but I'm not very comfortable in whatever the first language may be, I can say, again, I'm going to speak in French, but subtitle in English. And then when I start, normalement, je vais être capable de vous parler complètement en français. Si je parle en français, les sous-titres vont afficher en anglais. Donc, je suis en mesure de vous livrer une présentation complètement en français sans souci parce que les sous-titres vont être en anglais. I just think that's incredible. Think about that when you have students that are struggling for understanding, if they're just new arrivals to Canada, they're having a really hard time communicating, they could speak to you in their language and have that subtitled in English for you. You can actually do this directly in Microsoft Translator, which is another application, but it's great that you have access to it right inside PowerPoint. Again, it does it for the desktop as well as for the online version. You can do it in both. So that is some quick features around PowerPoint and accessibility. We looked at the themes, we looked at subtitling, we looked at dictation. The last piece is some slide recording or some screen recording. This is more for you if you have those auditory or those visual learners. You can actually go into any PowerPoint slide deck. Now, this one is only available on the desktop, and you can actually go under Insert, and you can do a screen recording. You can say, okay, I would like to show students how to navigate inside these things. I can select the area. I can even ask it to record my audio and then record. And now anything I do on the screen in this area will be recorded. So I could say, okay, we're going to focus on education themes. Then we're going to focus on subtitling. Then we're going to focus on dictation. I stop the recording and automatically that video with my recording gets bumped to the PowerPoint, and I can press play. And it will play back.
So I could say, okay, we're going to focus on education themes, then we're going to focus on subtitling, then we're going to focus on dictation.
And there we go. So that is some really interesting ways you can just screen record. I do this all the time for students that ask me, Miss, how do I do this? Or I don't remember how to do that. I just quickly grab those screen recordings. They get jumped right into the PowerPoint slide deck. And then when I send that out or I share that out with my students, they can just follow along, not simply with written instructions, but visual instructions as well. And for those students that maybe have any visual impairments, they can actually hear what I'm saying versus having to read my slide. So that is the PowerPoint amazing accessibility features. I've included little screen grabs here that you can see everything, so you remember where those options were. I've included why the PowerPoint presenter coach is so great and how the Rehearse with the coach actually will help the students to deliver great presentations. And then last but not least, I really mean I have 2 more minutes and then I'll leave it for a bit of questions, is dictation. So any students that have problems with dyslexia or dysgraphia or any physical difficulty that might inhibit them from actually writing on a keyboard, this is going to need a feature for them. So this is a student who is planning his kind of program. This is him trying to write his story, writing it by hand. This is the same student who is able to just simply talk out loud and have his ideas now written out on paper for him. This is another example. This is an 11-year-old who was, the teacher asked when, where, and who. And you can see that the student had such a hard time kind of trying to get her ideas out. This is the same student who actually wrote out loud using the dictation an incredible story. So we have these blockers that could potentially be in the way simply by the way that we're asking our students to interact with content. So if you want your students to be able to dictate, to speak out loud, they can do it in a lot of different areas inside the Microsoft platform. But I'm just going to show you one that many of us know and love, and that is just simply in Word. So if I go into the Word platform, I create a new blank document, you will be able to see that across the top in that main home page, I have this little microphone right here. And this little microphone will allow me to dictate directly inside the Word environment. So I'm going to click on the dictate. I'm going to choose dictate as an option. And then you will see that it says that it's listening to me. You get this little menu that pops up and it is going to start recording me. If I want to stop, I can start typing and you will see that it starts writing out exactly what I'm saying. If I wanted to do auto punctuation, I can choose the language I'm going to speak. I can turn on punctuation and then I'm going to hit OK and I'll start recording again. And now when I start speaking, if I take a longer pause or if I completely start a new sentence, it will actually do the punctuation for me. So I really think that the dictation feature is extremely, extremely powerful for those students who have any challenges when it comes to physically writing or physically getting their ideas out on paper. The dictation feature completely removes that barrier for them and allows them to get their ideas out in a clear and concise way. And then you'll see it will put the punctuation back in afterwards, and it gives me some editing options as well. It says, oh, you know what? Maybe we want to put a comma here. Maybe we want to check some of the spelling. You know, that word, you duplicated it. Let's get rid of that. This word, you said I'm, it should look like that. So it helps the students even edit their writing afterwards. So that is the dictation feature. Again, it's not complicated. I gave a few more examples here just so that you could see how powerful this tool really can be. But the dictation feature is amazing and it is found across a lot of different Microsoft products, in Microsoft Teams, in PowerPoint, in Word, in OneNote, really in a lot of our tools. So before I hand it over for a couple of minutes of questions, I just wanted to give you a few additional resources. I have given you the accessibility PDF, that is that kind of graphic with all of the different accessibility tools. I have pointed you towards the Microsoft Education Center, where they have entire learning platforms and entire courses just built on accessibility. I have a link to Microsoft Accessibility page where it shows all of the accessibility features in depth. And I have given you a little code there that you can redeem at the Microsoft Education Center for having followed a 1 hour of training with us. So thank you so much for choosing to spend one of your sessions at the ATLE conference with myself and Tammy. I really appreciate your time. We're going to hang out for a couple more minutes just for questions, but if you have any feedback for us, please do share some feedback. And if you have any questions at any point, you can always send us an email at help@the Collective or help@cobblestonecollective.ca. We are real people that take care of that help email, and we're more than happy to get back to you. So thank you so much. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to hand it back and see if there's any questions that we have.
No, the one thing that people like really seriously just mind blown of the features that you shared. So thanks, Alex, so much for that. There was some discussion about just what's available on what device, and because I know that some of it is device specific and what you're able to see on your desktop, and that and it's there in everything. Somebody was asking about, well, some of this must be paid for.
Nope, it's all free if you are in education.
Yeah, so that's the great piece. So everyone was saying, how much is the extra cost? It's not
it's
extra.
Nothing.
It's just,
the cost is zero.
Yeah, so as long as you're in education, it's there for you. So just make sure that you have signed in with your education domain, and then you'll have access to what you need. So thanking everybody for what you're doing here today. Are there any other questions? That was the only question. How much is extra cost? And we just answered that. So if there's anything that comes up in the recording and you're tinkering around and it's just not going as you need to, jump on out to that help@cobblestonecollective.ca where somebody will answer your questions.
Exactly.
Thank you very much. That was an amazing presentation. I learned lots of stuff there. So I'm going to stop the recording now. And I'll hang out for a bit and keep the meeting open if anybody needs to stay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.